Welcome to the second hour of our program, and on the line with us is our buddy Phil Ittner, the veteran war correspondent who's now based in Kyiv, Ukraine. You can follow his video blog on YouTube by knowing his name and how to spell it correctly. It's 6 letters each name, Philip, P-H-I-L-I-P, Ittner, I-T-T-N-E-R. On Twitter, or X, it's the reverse of that. It's Ittner Philip. His old account got hacked, so if you had been following him, you want to follow the new one, Ittner Philip. Phil, welcome back to the program. Looks to me like you're wearing what is that shirt called? It's a Ukrainian.
I am in observation of Ukrainian Independence Day, August 24th. I am wearing traditional embroidered Ukrainian clothing called the Vyshyvanka. The Vyshyvanka, and this particular one has the trident on it. I don't know if you can see that there. There we go, the trident. But it's a lovely day. People are out enjoying the sunshine. They have lined up along the main street in the capital tanks and artillery and weapons of war that the Russians will not be leaving with. Their hulks, their carcasses, defeated by Ukrainian forces. But it just reminds people that there are those who would wish to steal the independence away from the Ukrainian people. And from what I saw on the street today, that's going to be a hard task, because these people are fiercely proud of being free and being independent, and that's what today has been all about.
There you go. Obviously the big news right now is the death of Yevgeny Prigozhin. I'm reading that there is speculation that his plane was taken down by a Russian army surface-to-air missile. Do you have any further information on that? And what do you think will be the consequence or the import of this event?
Well, it's so typical with Prigozhin. This is surrounded in mystery and shadow and a lot of questions. It does look as though a plane upon which he was on the manifest was shot down or brought down from an explosion outside of the city of Tver, which is a military base. Tver is one of Russia's primary military centers. So it could have been anti-aircraft. But of course, in order to do that, somebody very high up would have had to authorize that. It could have been Putin himself. But also, given the history of Prigozhin and his animosity towards, for example, Minister of Defense Shoigu, that is also a possibility. But again, as is so common with Prigozhin, a lot of this stuff is it's so rife for conspiracy theories, because we don't know exactly what happened. As a matter of fact, at this moment, Tom, we don't have confirmation that he's dead. I mean, there's a preponderance of evidence that he has been killed. That is even an accepted narrative by the Russian authorities. But, we also know that Prigozhin is a guy who experimented with, disguises and false identities. And this is the type of person who would be, liable to fake his own death. Not saying that has happened, but a lot of this is in shadow and in question. Because of those questions, I think it's going to be rife for conspiracy theory. But the important thing, Tom, is one way or the other, Prigozhin is off the stage. He is no longer a factor when it comes to the Ukrainian war or indeed power politics within Russia. I do not think, however, he will be the last casualty.
Yeah, well, I totally get that. Is this now the Wagner Group was operating in Ukraine, and then they moved to Belarus. They're also operating in at least one African country and in Syria, if I'm recalling correctly, maybe Libya. So I saw a report last night that suggested that much of the Wagner Group is not hierarchical top-down. It's more lateral. It's it's more like individual cells. Like the old Communist Party in the 1930s. How is it organized, and what would his death mean for the future of the Wagner Group? Or will Putin just, scoop it up and either reinvent it as another mercenary army, military force, or legitimize it as part of the Russian military?
Well, there was the effort to draw Wagner into the regular Russian military structure, and that was a major part of the falling out that Prigozhin had with the rest of the power structure and with the rest of the kind of military that have been fighting here in Ukraine. He did structure it. Prigozhin had Wagner structured so that there was more of almost like an NCO class, which is not how the Russian military is set up. The Russian military is set up with a vast amount of conscripts, like enlisted men, and then a few, a couple of kind of middle grade officers, but mostly it's either you're at the top of the military grade or you're a conscript. Wagner wasn't like that, and so it engendered a lot of loyalty from the people that he brought into Wagner. He also went to prisons. That was a pretty shocking development at the beginning of the war here. He went to prison facilities and recruited, rapists and murderers and, promising them their freedom if they came and fought in Ukraine. So again, another reason why some people within Wagner had this loyalty for Prigozhin. So you ask, what now for Wagner post? Not only was Prigozhin on that plane, presumably, or on the manifest, but so was his primary commander, which is this guy Utkin, Dmitry Utkin, who was a straight up Nazi. The guy had swastikas and SS tattoos all over his body, and he also, he didn't just talk the talk; he walked the walk. He was a vicious, vile human being, as was Prigozhin. The esprit de corps within Wagner is brutal. There are reports of people when they tried to run away from the front lines within Wagner, they were caught and killed with a sledgehammer to the skull. This was an awful organization, and Prigozhin set that standard. He was a horrible human being. I wish death on nobody, but the world is a better place without him. Yeah. He got his start in the criminal organizations in St. Petersburg, which is where he met Putin. He was kind of Putin's thug, his kind of attack dog. His enforcer. He was prominent within the Internet Research Agency, which was responsible for a lot of cyber attacks, not least of which within the election of 2016 in America. This is a bad guy, and the Wagner organization is a bad organization. What is the future for Wagner? More likely than not, it will be brought into the fold of the Russian military, one way or the other. You mentioned all the places around the world in which Wagner was active, not least of which within Africa. Libya, they kind of got kicked out of. In Syria, it's interesting, the story of Wagner, because that's where Wagner went toe-to-toe with American forces, because they tried to take an oil field. And there was a U.S. Special Forces unit there, and they called in air support and artillery and drones, and the Wagner soldiers that were on the ground in Syria got really shellacked. And so there's that. But, they also were effective in Bakhmut here in Ukraine. The Ukrainians have no love for Prigozhin or Wagner because they're brutal. The way they fight on the ground here in Ukraine has been absolutely disgusting and tragic. So, on Independence Day, there are those who are raising a glass to the demise of Prigozhin. But we will have to see what happens, not only with Wagner, but also the power structure, between people inside Russia. This is another example of how Russia's center of gravity can no longer hold. This kind of, shooting down a plane, if it was indeed shot down, or an explosion internally.
Putting a bomb on it.
This.
Yeah. Doesn't this strengthen Putin,
things
though?
Are not stable.
Yeah, Phil, doesn't this strengthen Putin? Doesn't this say to all of the other oligarchs and any other wannabe and the small handful of military officials who were trash talking Putin around Ukraine, you're next, look out, fall into line?
If it was Putin that did this. Well, keep in mind that Prigozhin had a lot of enemies within the power struggle. It could have been a situation of who will rid me of this meddlesome priest, sort of thing, and somebody took it upon themselves, or somebody who had a beef directly with Prigozhin, because as we've discussed in the past, I think there's this conflict happening within the power elite because there is a lot of instability growing in Russia, and the future is not secured. And so people are trying to jockey for position. If it was indeed Putin, you're right, it does kind of strengthen his hand. But it makes you wonder, why did he wait 2 months? There must have been some sort of usefulness that Prigozhin gave to Putin in the interim period there, because otherwise, why was he not immediately thrown in prison? Why was he not
my guess would be it took
killed?
2 months for Putin to get his people well installed in the various.
This is also a certain possibility.
Pieces
and
of Wagner
Prigozhin's death. Yesterday's plane, and again, it's a lot of hinky stuff going on here, but it comes immediately after Prigozhin had posted a video in which he claimed to have been in Africa. So did he go to Africa and kind of arrange things to be transferred off, the baton to be handed off? And then that was the point where he was no longer useful. You have to understand Putin's mentality is, I will keep you around if you are useful to me. There is a reason why Prigozhin was left alive for the last 2 months since his mutiny or insurrection or whatever it was. And the question is, at what point did he stop being useful, if indeed it was Putin who ordered his death?
Yeah, and as long as nobody knows for sure who killed him, I mean, the assumption across Russia is going to be it was Putin, right?
Yeah, I mean, even if it wasn't him, he might very well, kind of allude to the fact that he took. Yeah, exactly. Now, the other question is, was it the Ukrainians? Zelensky has come out and said, no, it wasn't us. And certainly, that is a very difficult thing to achieve for the Ukrainians, to put sort of a bomb on
within
so
Russia.
I think we can. Yeah, I think we can discount the Ukrainians having done it. But, at this point, it's way too early to start definitively saying what happened.
Phil Ittner, follow his blog over on YouTube with Philip Ittner. Phil, thanks so much.
Happy Independence Day.
Thank you. You too.
Thom Hartmann